Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all okay. Slight change for this week where I'm hosting the stream today, so apologies in front of that if you were wanting to see Sween's wonderful locks, but you'll have to wait another week. Today I am joined by the wonderful Mod Lenny.
Hello.
Mod Nin.
Yo.
Mod Zuko.
Hello.
And Mod Tide.
Hello there.
First things first, let's get the pleasantries out of the way. How are you doing, Lenny?
I'm doing very well this week. Here in the office, enjoying life back in the live stream studio for once instead of doing a stream from home.
So what, this is the second time someone's been in the studio for us in 18 months?
Yeah, I mean, I think between this and the Summer Summit, that's about it.
It's all very exciting. Has it changed much?
I mean, I'm told there's a hell of a lot of new stuff behind the scenes here, but I couldn't tell you about all of it. There is also a saw back there and a thumbs up from Modspear. Forget the saw.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. There was. Right, Mod Nin, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I got a new laptop this week, and I tweeted about it because it can run Old School RuneScape at 360 frames a second. And let me tell you, it looks smooth, but I don't think I need that.
You're just gloating to the rest of us that haven't upgraded yet.
That's true, yeah. Look at my cool thing.
Modzuko, how are you?
I'm not okay. That was just, oh my god. Yeah, I'm all right. I'm doing really good this week. I'm very happy. It's exciting
sure?
times. Oh yeah, I'm trying not to cry laughing at the sword falling down in the background. But yeah, it's exciting times at Old School at the moment. So doing really good, thank you. Enjoying all of the work on the enhanced client and everything.
And last but definitely not least, Mod Tide. How the devil are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Enjoying my work on the enhanced client. Everything was going swimming this week, and then all of a sudden, my internet's just not working now, so I'm on mobile, and it's just awful.
It's alright, hopefully you don't drop out over the next hour. After that, your internet can go out.
And hopefully no builders drill into your room.
Right, let's move on to the few announcements that we've got for today's stream. If you stream, I don't know who's screaming. Exclamation mark game update, where our second batch of new client features are finally here. Check out the new features like the agility helper, tile indicators, increased draw distance, and more using the Steam client. Let us know what you think. Find out more with exclamation mark game update. Next one is exclamation mark Summer Summit. Last Saturday, we tried a new format to get you excited for the upcoming content coming to Old School. With the lack of RuneFest, we debut our Summer Summit, full of reveals, details, and questions about the next 6 months of content. Catch up on all of the keynotes and more with exclamation mark Summer Summit. And lastly, we have exclamation mark merch. Check out the new limited edition pins from Angelscapes, available now on the official merch store. Dazzle your friends with the Lunar pin, a shiny set of ceremonial Moon Clan armor, or stand out from the crowd with the Bertie pin. Find all this and more with exclamation mark merch. And as always, if there's anything you would like to ask the team or myself, please at Old School RS with your questions. We have Modlite and Mod Sani in the chat, catering to all your wonderful needs. Right, let's crack on to the player creations showcase that we normally do. If we could bring up the first one, please, Modspear. And here we have the smallest rares that you will probably ever see from the creator Ironmoin.
What were they made out of?
Could it be plasticine?
They're very cute.
It's so cute.
I can't believe how tiny they are.
How would you have made this? How long would it have taken as well?
very carefully.
It reminds me of the videos of where you see people like carving sculptures into the tops of pencils. Where it's just so small and intricate.
Yeah, it's stuff like that and like balancing rocks, like where you just have to be really, really careful. I don't know how anybody does it.
Alright, following on from that one, we have the next one, which is from I Own Every Card, and it's the Halloween costume from 5 years ago. Check out that fashionscape.
Absolute Chad.
I love
Yeah,
it.
they were the talk of the
staff set's
town.
really good. It's
If
all
I met
really
him in the
good.
wilderness, I'd drop my spade instantly.
You think of that gear?
Yeah, it's easily a
Look,
stare
I'm
and
not
run
good
away,
at
right?
PvP, alright?
Where's the unholy book though?
Where
I
he's
don't know,
with
but
his
he's
wielding
ready though.
magic.
He's got his bruise in the background.
Couple of brewskis. Right, from the third one, from PBRD, prototype of a new base they modelled for characters.
That is so cool.
Is that
It's
3D
really,
printed?
really cool.
I think the top of the
Gosh.
model is, at least.
Yeah, it
Reckon
looks
there's
like
individual. Reckon there's every individual LED lights in the rooms.
I'd say it's one big one underneath.
I mean, whatever it is, it looks awesome.
Absolutely.
Definitely
Changes
one of those
colour
behind
as
me.
well.
Yeah, I'll take one. How much?
Send the bunch
Can I
to the
have one?
office.
Can I have one with fire boots, please?
Finally, on to the last one from the Atlantis_RS with their ideas for the Raids 3 range armor.
I like this. Very angular. Kind of like almost elven in a way, with the they look like crystals.
A little bit ghostly towards the centre.
Yeah,
I
I
was
do
gonna
love
say,
them all,
I'd
but
love the sorry, go on.
is it just me that gets Iron Man helmet vibes from E?
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
good point.
It looks a lot like.
I
gladiator
love
armor
it,
as well.
but
It's kind of like
Yeah.
like a desert guard. I think that looks kind of like a desert guard. Like what I'd want is the red eyes. And somehow I don't know if we have red eyes in any of our helmets, but that'd be really cool.
I feel like A to C kind of give me a very like if Barrows was made today kind of thing, or something that's coming from Mauritania kind of feel.
I could definitely see that. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Right, with that being all of the player stuff we're showing off today, we may as well crack straight into the new feature showcase for the client with Mod Lenny, take it away.
Awesome. So, yeah, as was mentioned in the announcements, we did release a new batch of client features yesterday for the Steam client, and this isn't going to be quite the same sort of look ahead showcase that we did last stream that we were here together. This is just going to be having a quick look over the things that were made available yesterday that you can start getting your hands on in the Steam client at this point. So I think a good place to start off would be where we'll find all these features, and the settings menu in itself had a nice little bit of an overhaul. Mods Roq, do you want to talk us through the sort of changes that we made here?
Sure. So I had a great deal of fun trying to figure out how to categorize everything in terms of where they would best fit on a settings menu. So most of the idea of what we were going for here is to organize it in such a way that the moment that you see those tabs, you would try and figure out immediately what would actually be under there. So, for example, you see warnings, and that would make sense for the position for something like drop item warnings and casting alchemy warnings and stuff like that. You wouldn't necessarily think of that as related to chat, even though it's something that pops up in your chat box. And we've overall just expanded things out a little bit, so now chat is more to do with its notifications. Eventually we'll probably have even more sections there for specifically notification effects. There'll be a lot more going on in graphics as we flesh out the client, controls for your keybind needs. interfaces. That was, yeah, great fun trying to figure out actually how to sort of semantically separate all these things, because there's a lot of overlap between activities, gameplay, and interfaces. But yeah, basically anything that just acts as a heads-up display I've popped under interfaces. Something that doesn't necessarily relate to any specific activity in the game. Whereas gameplay is actual things that happen in the game itself, death piles and accept aid, things like that, and activities are just for specific training methods.
Yeah, awesome. It's obviously there's been a hell of a lot more settings added to this menu since we sort of overhauled it, and you can kind of tell this is why we need to do that overhaul. We were very restricted in the side panel we used to have, and this has given us a lot more flexibility, and the fact we can just restructure it all like this has been really awesome. It just shows how good a job Mod done on it. What was it, a year ago now coming up?
Yep.
Yeah, I believe we started on it a year ago, yeah.
Yeah.
Or we did it a year ago.
Can you believe that before then we just tried to cram them all into the side panel?
It was an experience trying to do it. But while we're here, let's take a look at some of the actual settings. So in one of the new categories we've got up here, activities, we've got some new features here under the skills section about this agility helper, which Mods Roq has been doing a lot of the work on over the past number of months. I'm going to go ahead and toggle all of this on so that over here in Draenor Village we can go and start training some agility. Really? Just the content that everyone's here tuned in for. Good bit of agility training. So I'm just going to start doing a couple of laps.
Could you up your interface scaling a little bit so that it's a bit more...
I can, as it happens.
We even had people asking where interface scaling was, and it's already in our client.
Oh, it's beautiful.
While I'm scaling it up, I'll also point out we have this fancy new setting here, courtesy of... I believe Modern had some involvement, but a lot of our Mod Squid for the content side of it, and the engineers behind the background are doing the technical mumbo jumbo that's all over my head here. But you can change the way that this quite looks, or
it's looking a little
perhaps
broken, not gonna lie.
It does look a little broken in this case. That's okay. It's not in live. We know that much. But yeah, if you want to go ahead and start talking about what work went into the agility helper here while I do some laps.
So the agility helper was actually probably my first big addition to the enhanced client that I begun in March, and the fascinating thing about working on a feature like this is that there's a lot of edge cases that you don't quite expect coming into it. So calculating laps per hour, the laps until the next level, which Mod Lenny doesn't actually have up because he's level 99 agility most likely, but I can promise you it's there. The calculation of that is difficult. You have to think, for example, what if someone gets some other agility XP from another source, for example, lamps? You probably don't want that to be actually calculated on there. Another thing that comes up is, for example, what about like, for example, leagues and Deadman mode, where you have XP multipliers? All of a sudden, that whole system worked completely differently to the kind of implementation I first used. So it took kind of a lot of attempts to kind of get it into this position where you just have a box in the top left corner and it displays stuff that is correct. I'll admit it actually took me quite a while there. And I think I can probably pass back to Mod Lenny actually on those beautiful green boxes surrounding the area to have a chat about.
Yeah, so obviously the other thing that we've got going on here are these highlights around all of the obstacles on the courses, and there's a whole lot of stuff well beyond what I could explain going on in here in how these actually get displayed, and I'll sort of shortly hand over to Modern for some of that. But this has just been this sort of interesting problem of, okay, cool, we know that we want to highlight these things. How do we actually highlight the right things at the right times? Because when you're just running past Draenor, you might want the helper to generally appear and show you where to do it, but you probably don't want that huge green rectangle in passing. And so we tried to sort of contextually show the right things at the right times. And we went back and forth a good few times on what the best approach to it was. It was well over a year ago that we first started planning all of this and actually deciding how to do some of the work. And we might have made a decision way back then that when we actually came to implementing it this year, we just decided was wrong. We wanted to approach it in a completely different way. Or we might have just not remembered quite exactly how we reached the decision that we did at that point. And so we had some back and forth to just figure all of those details out and come to a solution that we're, I think, now pretty happy with all round. As for the highlights themselves, yeah, Modern, is there anything you want to sort of touch on there?
I think all I'd say is that rendering outlines is a lot more complicated than you'd expect it to be. That's about it. I had another point, but I've forgotten it. So yeah, moving on.
Sure. So,
I remembered. It's that when these come to mobile, which they will, that will be very useful. That was my point.
Yeah, so one of the things worth noting is, obviously, all of this stuff's currently just on the Steam client on desktop, but that's not where it's planning to stay. We do plan to make it more widely available, including on mobile, which is going to be a huge quality of life improvement to just people's mobile experience. But moving on to something else that came out yesterday, I suppose, while I'm stood up on here, this rooftop, let's take a look at how far we can see from here. Because we can see a lot more of the game world than we used to be able to. And, I mean, it's a pretty good view from up on the rooftops. And one thing that I've seen sort of immediately, as soon as we put this out, was people asking, cool, looks great, can we get some fog with it too? And yeah, that's something that we'll be looking at in coming releases. I wouldn't want to put any kind of time frame on it, but it's something that we know that people want. We started looking at how we can do it, and it will be there at some point.
I like that if you look into the distance towards Falador, you can see another shortcut being highlighted.
You can. Again, courtesy to Mods Zuko there for that one.
You're welcome. It's tough work adding that one.
And on the topic of being able to see a bit more of the world, we've also added the ability to zoom in and out on the minimap, which a few people might have noticed sneaked into last week's release instead of just this one. But as well as the actual ability to zoom, you can now enable, disable it, and reset the zoom. So it's not just there and you're kind of screwed if you zoom out a little more than you wanted it to be. And this slipped through the cracks a little bit when we were a little sort of out of sync with ourselves on all of the content and the tech work. But it made for a nice little teaser to go out a week in advance that a few people sort of clocked onto in the Steam build. And I think, Modern, this was another one of yours, wasn't it?
Yeah, there were actually a couple of interesting things to consider when doing this. Obviously, rendering the map bigger and smaller when you zoom in and out is one thing to do. But then also, when you zoom really far out, if you have all of the icons on the minimap, like where you can get water and where the shops are, it gets pretty noisy, particularly in areas like Roq and Falador. So yeah, I had to make sure, okay, past like a certain level, we should probably turn these off. And then another thing was the white lines through all the walls were really bright and noisy, so it's like really subtle, but when you zoom all of the way out, the white lines are actually slightly darker than normal, just to kind of make it a bit nicer to look at.
Wait, really?
Not something we had to do by any stretch of the imagination, but like, yeah, just to make it less noisy, because, you know, there's no anti-aliasing on it, it's a bit, it does get a bit noisy, so dimmed them just like a little bit. Fun fact.
Fascinating. Almost as fascinating as the varying shades of white that I discovered were used in the top left op text that we have in the Java client, and you can toggle on here. Moving on to another feature on the topic of the minimap again, there's a nice little segue in. One thing that we got from Tide was the sort of importing of the ability to just minimize the minimap on desktop. Do you want to talk about this one, Tide?
I can do. So on mobile, you can do this already. You can long tap on the minimap and fold it into the corners. So what I've done is I've ported this over to the Steam client, So now you can disable your minimap on there too, and should remember it on login and log out and over PCs.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a really nice little improvement that, see, like you say, it's already there on mobile. There was kind of no reason for us not to have it there on desktop as well. So it seemed like a nice little thing to add in while we were looking at the minimap for other reasons. One more feature to take a quick look at. Let's open the search and go to activities. We've got some new tile markers. So with the last release, we sort of added the ability to just be able to mark tiles for yourself. And now we've got a few sort of extra tile highlights that you might like to toggle on. So we've got one for the highlighted hovered tile. Highlighting the hovered tile, highlighting your current tile based on your server position, and highlighting the destination tile, the tile that you're going to run to. And this has been tied into the game very nicely by Mods Roq. It looks like I may actually be running just a slightly different version of the client in the streaming room.
Oh, Lenny, come on. This is the big feature. This
is. I'm quite upset with myself that I didn't check this one out before the demonstration. But as I say, regardless, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen it on the Steam client or already play with it on third-party clients. We've got these 3 separate tiles that will be shown. One for your true position on the server, one for whatever tile your mouse is over, and one for wherever it might be that you're running to. And short of Squid being here to discuss the content involved in it. Nen, is there anything on the sort of more technical side of it that you feel like is worth covering?
I think something that's like the default colors are quite interesting. Mods Roq spent like quite a while trying to find like the correct default colors for them that are gonna be visible like everywhere, including the desert, and including like, you know, trying to pick one color for every single color of ground that exists in the game, including purple, is like I don't know how you do that. Yeah. Not much more to say on them really. They work and they're very useful. And again, when this comes to mobile, you'll have your destination marker that will be on by default. You'll be able to see where exactly you've tapped because you don't really have that feedback on mobile, and it'll be very useful. And the other ones, I really want to get it so that if you've got a mobile phone with a stylus and it's got like hover functionality, that we actually get the hover tile to work with a stylus. I just personally want that.
This is one that comes up a lot from you. You can definitely tell that you're somebody with a stylus for their phone.
Yeah, that would be me.
Cool. So before we move on to some more general questions about the sort of client from Mods Roq, are there any other features that we might want to demonstrate that I'm forgetting? I'm sure I probably am. It's been a long week.
You made a good comment earlier. Let me find it. Draw distance, minimap, UI scaling quality. Short of looking over the agility shortcuts or anything upcoming, I think that's about it,
Maybe we
really.
can take a quick run back over to, or quick teleport back over to South of Falador.
I have quickly asked our friends over in the live stream department if they can display a picture at some point of those tile indicators so we can show them off. So hopefully we'll.
This looks like we'll get it in a moment. We'll have it in 2 seconds. But yeah, so these shortcut highlights that we didn't see so much with the courses are just another little thing that's been sort of packed in nicely with the rest of the agility work. So you'll see these highlights all around the game if you've got it toggled on. Yeah, anything more about it that you want to sort of discuss, Zuko?
Sure. Probably the one thing that I've seen coming up from people is basically that there seems to be quite a lot of missing shortcuts. So I kind of had to do a cutoff point for this job alone. Because as it turns out, there is a hell of a lot of different considerations into what might actually make a agility shortcut what it is. Cool. We've got the tile indicators on the screen now, so we can talk about that if you want. You know what? Let's segue from that thought from and talk about the tile indicators, and then we'll jump right back on the shortcuts and what we're doing in the future with that.
Yeah, so I think we've kind of largely covered a lot of what there is to cover with it, but it's nicely shown here with a non-broken client like I have at my hands here. And yeah, so as you can see, you've got 3 things being highlighted here. You've got the red tile, which is the mouse over tile. That's wherever your mouse might be pointing. The green tile, where you're running to. And the blue tile is your sort of true position as the server acknowledges it to be. Because when you're sort of having to animate all this running, the server and the client aren't necessarily going to quite agree on where you are. It's not going to look nice if we just throw you ahead to sort of catch up constantly. And so this sort of true position, which is what the server looks at, is something that people are very interested in getting their hands on when it comes to any sort of in-depth mechanics that care about where you're stood exactly. So if we want to get back to the shortcuts, was there something more you wanted to cover there?
Yeah, sure. Those tile indicators are really gorgeous. I love that. Yeah, basically, there's probably a lot of things that we should be highlighting across the game. So for now, we just made the decision. We've highlighted whatever appears in the agility skill guide at the time being. So if there are little things around the game that haven't been added, it's probably because they weren't in the skill guide, and perhaps they should be in the skill guide. Seems to be a little bit of inconsistency there, so that's always been fun. And then we're thinking about highlighting, for example, things that aren't really agility shortcuts, things like the escape mechanisms from some places, like webs at Arachnis, or the ice chunks at Forcaf, or just the ladder at Temperos. So yeah, that's about all I really wanted to say on shortcuts for now, but I'm sure you're going to see a lot of that handy, beautiful highlighting appearing around the game shortly.
Awesome. One thing that is probably worth noting on them as well is that we do have future updates to the shortcuts highlighting themselves planned. Obviously, you currently run around the game world and you see lots of these bright green highlights, and we'd like to make it a little bit more intuitive for people who don't necessarily know what all of these shortcuts are, and sort of tailor the colour to whether or not you can actually use it. Whether that's based on, if you've got the right agility level, whether you've got a grappling hook with you, if you've completed the right diaries that are needed for it. We'd like to show it in one colour for you can't use this shortcut, another colour for, hey, there's this cool shortcut here you come and use. It's just a little bit further down the line, but that is the sort of thing that we're going to be looking at continuing to improve this feature with. I think, unless I'm missing anything, that'll probably be it for this sort of demonstration here, and we can move on to some questions.
Hello.
Right. Awesome. I don't think anyone is disagreeing with the fact that all of these additions to the client are amazing, and we do hear the ones that you're constantly calling out for as well, and we are listening. It's just don't forget that these things do take time, and we have already, when we announced the first set of features, I believe we put out a kind of like a roadmap of the things that we're looking at over time. So if you go back and have a look through our news archive, you'll definitely be able to find out the things that we're looking at. And we're constantly looking at the suggestions that you guys are saying that the client can benefit from. As well as we are eventually looking to bring it to mobile as well. We know the mobile client is very important to some players, and all of these features that we have should essentially be able to migrate across when ready to do so. So yeah, let's jump straight into the client-related questions that the wonderful mods Light and Sani have gathered for us. The Ultimate Potato asks, does the team have a date for when Steam client features will be pushed to the main game, or rather to the non-Steam client?
I don't believe we currently. Yeah, I don't believe we currently have a date planned for this. It's something that we are working towards. It's something that's definitely on our roadmap, but we couldn't really give many details at this point. It's not, unfortunately, quite as straightforward. Just put it out into the current Java client as people might like to hope. It is a completely separate client that we're dealing with here, and Steam's a great platform for us to just put it out on to start with.
Yeah, I think people have to remember that the Steam client is obviously running it in a completely different language than what the original base client was created in Java. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to work on two different versions of the same piece of content right now, where we can focus on upgrading one of the clients and then having players use those and provide their feedback. So when eventually they do migrate to other places like mobile and Java, then they're already in a tip-top position for players to jump straight in with them. Anyone else have anything they want to add about that?
No, just that, yeah, it's the Steam client for now, but it will not be the Steam client forever. It will come off of Steam eventually. That's it.
Awesome. Right. XIIFN asks, will the Steam client be able to be used without linking your account to Steam? And another question for the team, will inventory tags / keybind remapping be coming to the Steam client? Cheeky twofer on that one.
Yeah, like as I just said, for now, as the client is only available through Steam, you will have to link your Steam account. Eventually, it will be available outside of Steam, and then you won't have to link your Steam account. For key bindings and inventory tags, there's definitely been some talk about key bindings. I'm aware of that. It's dependent on us like fixing the chat box. At the moment, you don't have to press enter to chat. It just takes like whatever key you press at any point. So we'll have to do something about that first, and then we'll give you all the keybinds you want. Not sure about inventory tags, if anyone else has a thought on that.
I can tell you that as a left-handed mouse user, I take key remapping extraordinarily seriously, and I will not let this slide. I'm on this dev team right now. Inventory tags. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going on the keybinds really quick. One of the first things that you said to me when you got your hands on like the new client, like several months ago, was, yeah, the F11 key full screens the game, but I use that as like a keybind for something. I was like, what? And it did, but only in development builds. So we were really confused for a while because we tried it on the live game to be like, no, that's fine, that's fine. Yeah, we fixed that.
Yeah, it's unacceptable, but you know, you're used to this lefty in gaming, unfortunately. I remember playing PlayerUnknown's battles. My God, I can't even speak. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds at one point, and one of my keys was mapped to inspect weapons. So unfortunately, it was permanently mapped. It couldn't be changed, and I just could not play that update because I wasn't able to shoot people. All I had to do was stare at my gun all the damn time. So yeah, it's big on my radar, and I'm done with this rant now. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, the key binding.
Sorry, go ahead.
The key binding is definitely something that's sort of on our radar, and we're looking at how to approach it and when the right time to do it is. It's just unfortunately one of several things that has this sort of long series of dependencies where we can't just jump in and do key binding. We've got to look at entity chat, which comes with a whole host of other sort of design questions about how exactly all of those interactions work with some other things we've got going on in the game. And we just kind of need to work through a step at a time. It's not something we can just jump straight to.
Right, awesome. Question number 3. Luneth asks, how are the team's thoughts on something like menu entry swapper for the Steam client? I understand it can be contentious and hard to incorporate within the settings, but there are a ton of things I think to be left click that aren't when trying the client, even more so when doing certain activities on mobile.
I think this would be a really... Go ahead. Good.
No, you know what? Chat, on this stream we often deal with a little bit of overlap with each other because we have a little bit of a stream delay. So sometimes we do speak over each other a little bit, but not tired, please.
Okay, well. Personally, I think this would be a really nice feature for both the mobile and the official client, but we'd have to be wary of where we put this in because you don't want people to be able to just continue left clicking to blackjack. That's a bit bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, personally, I'm not a fan of like RSIscape, to be honest with you. So if we can get away with expanding our feature set and making it a bit easier, then I'm all for it if it makes the game more comfortable to play. But these questions are going to be really difficult for us to answer because it comes down to the kind of split that the community might have on it as well, and how people perceive what kind of changes we might want to add into the game. And it's going to require kind of a big discussion, I think, maybe just with us on the team, but also probably extending out to see how you all feel about these features and whether or not you consider them overpowered or whether you consider them to be, quality of life features effectively more than anything.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that even considering this sort of update has sort of led us to think about has been thinking about how the mini menu works as a whole in the game. And I believe in RuneScape it's been sort of handed over to the content team. They can kind of do what they want with it, and they've got a bit more free reign over how exactly it's presented to the player. Whereas currently in Old School we just don't, and it's led us down the sort of path of seeing what can we do if we do get that access to the mini menu, what other features sort of come from that technology improvement. And so it's definitely something that we're kind of very keen to just keep looking at in that sort of aspect, regardless of this specific feature.
Yeah, I think we have to very much look at it in a way as like what is an improvement and what is a straight up just buff in terms of like content XP and things like that. Something that we have to obviously weigh up whenever we're creating content anyway. So these kind of features would all go through those kind of thoughts as well. Right. Hitman 8100 asks, once you have effectively released the backlog of features you have been working on for the past year, how long can we expect features to be implemented moving forward? Also, will client features have to be polled, or will they just be released as feature parity to other clients already being used by the player base?
Yeah, so it is kind of two questions in one. I'll take on the first one first. And the answer is we're not entirely sure just yet. There's a lot of stuff that we're looking at doing. We started talking about what some of those features are going to be in the future, and there's a lot more that we have in the works, we've got planned, and we've not necessarily spoken about yet. And at the rate we're going, we're looking at this sort of these sorts of drops of batches of features going well into next year. It's not sort of just cool, we've done a few features here and there, we're going to drop it now by any means. It's this huge ongoing project. We want to make it a client that people really want to use. We want to offer this sort of as an alternative to the clients that people are currently using. But yeah, I don't think we could put a sort of time frame on it by any means, because there's so much that we definitely want to do right now. There's so much that we're thinking this could be really cool to do. Beyond that, we might want to look at that afterwards. And it's this huge unwieldy beast that we've kind of got a good hold of half of it, and the other half is a lot of uncertainty still.
Yeah, there's other stuff like the helpers for existing content, like the Cox Scouter and other things like that. Like if we make a new piece of content and it would benefit from a helper like that, we're gonna have to consider like, okay, what do we think players would find helpful in this situation? Can we just kind of bake that into the piece of content anyway? I think Temporos is probably a good example because it tries to communicate all of the different things to you quite well. The fishing spots are a lot more like obvious and things like that. So yeah, we're just going to have to kind of carefully consider going forwards with future updates whether we do things like that.
I think it's one of those things that we're not really going to be 100% sure of what's going to happen until it gets into the player's hands. So we can obviously look at building the base of what we expect a helper to be for launches or for soon after launch, and then use the players to work with us in order to flush out the helper to be what it is they actually want.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting that obviously right now we're at this stage where we're trying to sort of retroactively fit all of these things to the past 8 years now of the game. Whereas going forwards, like you guys say, yeah, it's going to be sort of we'll look at how we can just try and avoid the need for it in a lot of cases, but it won't always come down to these sort of monthly, bi-monthly, however often it may be, just drops of batches of features. You might find if there's a piece of content that was sort of newly released and we decided, you know what, this could benefit from this sort of client work on top of it, that can just come out sort of following on from the content itself. It's not going to necessarily have to wait for the client team, so to speak, to catch up. It can just become part of the game as usual.
Yeah, there is one question that we have with that though that we're thinking about. For example, if we have a helper for example, Raids 3 when it comes out, when do we actually want to release that? When do we want to broadcast those things to the players? It's might be fair enough 6-8 weeks after the release, but we have to think about when are we actually going to turn that feature on?
Yeah, and for the sort of second half of this question as well, talking about whether or not these sorts of things will be polled. Obviously, so far we haven't been polling the things that we have been releasing. There might possibly be some things in the future that we decided, okay, maybe we should poll these kinds of features, but largely these are things that people are already playing with. They've been playing with for years, and would kind of be putting ourselves in an awkward situation to poll them and putting the player base in an awkward situation where if we polled one of these features and you guys said you don't want it, do all of the clients that everybody else might be using have to then go and remove it? Do we need to go back on our stance on these features? And so a lot of these things will just kind of be going into the game. We're making sure that they are all kind of opt-in features. They're not just things that are going to be forced on you. By all means, you can go and turn them off in the game settings if you want to play without those sorts of things. But we want to offer the same sort of abilities as other clients do.
Yeah, the menu entry swapper, I think, is probably like one example where, because that can affect metas, that can affect your XP per hour, that we poll that. But everything else, like, oh, we know people like this and use it. And it doesn't really, it's not really like broken.
Yeah.
Right, awesome. Jelos asks, are there any plans to add anti-aliasing into the Steam and mobile client?
Yes, somebody is probably working on it as we speak.
Thank you,
Next
Modnin.
question.
Well, Modnin's not working on it, he's on the stream with us.
Somebody might be.
You never know, this man's a wizard, he can pull amazing things off. He's probably going at it right now.
The chat's also calling you out, Mod Roq. It's pronounced aliasing. Anti-aliasing.
I
Maybe
was
I'm
tempted
pronouncing
to.
that wrong.
Tomatoes, tomatoes, potatoes, potatoes. Right. The Gozroth _lol asks, draw distance increase is great. Can we have an option to have the light fog at the point where things actually load in and become interactable? For example, if you see an agility shortcut, you can't actually click it. You can't actually click it to cue the shortcut. Sorry, I may have butchered that one. There was a cursor going over the question while I was reading it.
Yeah, I mean, so far as
That must have
the
been me.
fog stuff goes, like I was saying earlier, that fog is something that we are looking at. It's kind of being worked on and looked at, considered how we can approach it already. As for the interactions sort of thing, being able to see something that you can't interact with, I think Nin can probably speak a bit more to that.
Yeah, we've imposed a limit before on third-party clients where we've said you can't click something if it's like too far away. And we wanted to kind of keep to that same limit. It might be something we revisit in the future. I'm not sure about like kind of fading interactables in as they get close enough or something. But yeah, that's like kind of where we're at on it.
Awesome. Nikki Gill asks, thoughts on adding themes to the new client, like reskins, recolors for the HUD and UI? The resource pack client is pretty popular, and I know many players who can't live without the dark mode theme or resource pack.
I mean, I'd be all for it. I don't think we have any plans at the moment, but I would be all for it. Dark mode things are good. I've seen people with like some really disgusting colors about their UI who just like made the whole thing bright pink. there's no reason to say you can't do that.
So
When it
we
comes to
don't shame
themes like
people for
that.
those choices here.
When it comes to like actually adding things like that, though, it becomes like another thing for us to maintain. You know, if we add like a 2005 theme, 2006 theme, 2007 theme, 2010 theme, dark mode, things like that, we have to kind of keep maintaining sprites for all of those and things like that. It can become a bit unwieldy, I think. Just ask RuneScape devs what they think about legacy UI, because they hate it.
Yeah, and from another perspective as well, personally, I think what keeps RuneScape iconic is a lot of its look, specifically old school RuneScape, I mean. And I'm a little bit hesitant to make the game look so different that people wouldn't be able to immediately identify it. So I'm down for a few, recolors, but personally I'm a little bit off board with, making the game client look completely different.
Yeah, I think it's something we'd want to be a bit sort of selective about what extent we take it to. We definitely wouldn't take it to the same extent where people can just upload their own packs of sprites to the game and somehow sort of plaster them everywhere. But there are sort of steps that we could take towards this kind of thing. And it's something that I've considered in the past whenever I've been just looking at how all of our interfaces, sort of the more generic side of them are all built. And it's something that I'm really keen to just like explore technically how exactly it would be done. Not something that we've got particular plans for right now, but it's definitely something that we're sort of aware of.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to shut the door on the resource pack idea, like like Minecraft. It's like edit the sprite and then it looks different. I don't want to close the door on that because I think it's pretty cool and it removes that kind of burden from us to keep things up to date. But yeah, it's not something that we're planning at the moment.
Cool. Big Stick Strew asks, what's an example of something Runelite has as a plugin that you wouldn't want to see on the Steam client, and would the Steam client ever get its own version of the plugin hub?
I think the Quest Helper is one that we discussed. The Quest Helper plugin is just too strong, which is sad because it's very, very useful. But yeah, I think it's too strong.
And this is where it's
Let's go
hard.
to the wiki.
Yeah, wiki guides, just like the good old days. Get me on zybez.net. I don't know if I can say that.
Too late. It's definitely one of those things, and I think that's one of those plugins that kind of even brings questions between the staff members as well, where some staff are perhaps on the line of, yeah, okay, it's basically a wiki guide, and other staff are like, hang on a minute, it's a bit awkward because you're not even having to really find out the information for yourself, whereas the game's just telling you how to do it, per se. So that's definitely one that we'd think about and then either work with players and people or decide whether we want to do it or not.
Yeah. As for a plugin hub, we don't have any plans at this time for something like that.
Yeah, it's something that I know a lot of people are very keen to see, and it's something that the idea of it is like really exciting to us. It is this crazy idea of like, okay, cool, we've started building all of this stuff properly into the game. It's kind of like all the clients that take our Java client and work with it are kind of building on top of the game in a way where we're not building on top, we're building into the game. And being able to potentially offer a way that other people can do something like that is some crazy sort of blue sky idea, but it would be so cool to see. But yeah, something that absolutely wouldn't want to say is going to be coming at some point. Is something that we really need to just consider the feasibility of.
Yeah. I just wanted to respond to like some things I've seen in the chat. We're not gonna go and make Runelite turn the quest helper off. In fact, one of the things that we are doing, I've seen a lot of people asking about, I'm not sure if we've said this before, but like we're looking at doing like a clue scroll helper because that just makes that content more fun. It just makes it a lot more enjoyable to do. So we're looking at something like that. There isn't like a hard line that we're drawing. We're just trying to make like the best decision for the game in the end.
You see, controversial take here is that I'm not overly keen on the clue helper, but do think we can kind of gamify a way for it to work and make it feel RuneScape-y. Like, such as in a way that once as a player has completed a clue once or twice, it's as if their player remembers where it is to be able to go back there, as opposed to being directly told, okay, just go straight here if you've never even done it before. So that there is at least kind of a way to figure out where it is first, but after you've done it once or twice, you're kind of treating your player like you, whereas you'll remember, oh, okay, that's cool. I need to go over there. My player remembers. Therefore, my client will tell me to go straight there.
That's actually
Yeah,
exactly how Runelite handles the travel log for the fairy rings. It doesn't just list out every single fairy ring you've ever gone to. It only says, that takes me to there once I've actually gone there. And then it opens it up.
I didn't actually realise that that's how they did it. I always thought I looked down the list and go, oh, okay. So I'll have to now go to all the different fairy rings just so I've got a full list every time I want to do it. But that's kind of the way I think where you can integrate client features like that and make them feel like they really are part of the game and have that RuneScape feel in them.
Yeah, I think that kind of content, it kind of harkens back to this old style of role-playing game where like you are your character and so you better have a notepad and write down everything that you find out. Which I think is really cool, but it's not like the modern way to do it. It's not like the convenient way to do it. It's not the most fun way to do it for the majority of people. So yeah, I like that way of thinking.
Awesome. Boss High Scores asks, with the new client features, including the Raid Scouter feature for Chambers of Xeric, can we have the ability to re-roll the map layout on the board instead of showing up when entering the cave itself? Currently, you need an alt to hold the raid before you can properly gear and do the raid. If you raid on mobile or only have one account, solo chambers is very hard because you cannot properly prepare for a raid unless you own multiple accounts. Also, could you please let Buchu, Nox, Goldbar from bosses and such as Shamans, Mystics, Guardians, etc. show up for everyone in the raid? This makes preparing and collecting seeds as a team more easy to do. Another twofer.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few things in here, and not to be a sort of hype, but they're all a bit they're not these sort of client features that we're looking at. Yes, we sort of gone to James and Xeric and added this helper in, and these were completely different sort of step there. They're not things that I'd by any means just rule out, but we've looked in the past at sort of different solutions to, okay, how can we avoid the need for scouting raids? And I'm not entirely familiar with how all of the generation of a raid goes, but I don't think it's quite that simple that we can just have somebody sitting there and re-rolling it on an interface. I think with all of the work that goes into it, it's a far more complex process that needs people to really just go into the raid and have it sort of built. It sounds like a great idea by all means, but it's just not as simple as it might sound.
Yeah, with the current implementation, you'd basically be giving people the ability to spawn loads of instances because they wouldn't be able to shut down quick enough, kind of thing. Because at the moment it's done when you enter, it generates the instance and does it all. Whereas for the method the player is suggesting, you'd probably have to store them on the player, so when they enter it generates the raid based on the player variables.
Yeah, the server would not be happy.
It would not.
Like anyone? Something like that would just cause so much.
Yeah. As for the second half, I think I'm not sure if any of the others have many thoughts on it. It's not something that I'd personally want to say yeah, no. Like I say, it's not really a client feature, so to speak, and quite frankly, it's not content that I'm overly familiar with. I think.
I tell you what,
Zuko
we'll ask Modlite to put it into the player suggestions page that we have in house, and then we can discuss it then another time. Dragon17A asks, could you look into the anti-drag feature? Currently it doesn't let you drag stuff without holding shift. However, this means that when dropping items, anti-drag will be off. Furthermore, you sometimes want to be dragging your items around in PVM scenarios. Could you change it to a custom delay to drag items around?
So, I suppose the short answer is, with the current implementation of the feature, no. However, there's going to be a point where we need to revisit that feature entirely and look at the way it's been built, because people may or may not have seen a while back on Twitter, the inventory itself is going to be completely rebuilt, or has been rebuilt, and is waiting for the sort of ability to be able to be released into the game in that format. And at that point, we'll have a lot more flexibility about how exactly this is handled. Where it's currently largely handled by just tech inside of the client, it will suddenly become a lot more under our control as content developers. We can offer a lot more customization at that point. And so I think that would be the right time to look at these kinds of changes to it.
Yeah, I think it would avoid kind of like things like you've seen. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that video of a former member of staff trying to shift, click, drop, and constantly dragging their all about the place. So anti-drag features will definitely be able to help with things that perhaps require a bit more in the precise department for clicking things.
Also, it'd be cool if we could change it so it's the other way around, where I'm muddling on my words here. Yeah, so if it could work the opposite way it currently does now as well.
Right. By Hassad asks, with your new client, any plans for a fixed resizable mode?
Yep. Somebody is probably actively working on that right now.
Yeah,
Or it
I
might
did try
already
and...
be done.
I believe that bit is done on the tech side. I did try and look up their mod name before this stream, but I don't believe they actually have one yet. It's a new member of the sort of game engine team. As people might have seen, it's a rapidly growing team over the past couple of years, and they've really hit the ground running, doing some really awesome work on things just like that.
Mod TBC.
Mod TBC.
That brings us to the end of the client questions that we had lined up for us. Perhaps let's jump over to the Twitch chat questions. We'll go with question number 1 from Oddspirit. What's the next batch of updates we're planning for the Steam client?
So the next batch of updates, what is it that we're labeling it as, a sort of broad?
I think this is the skill helpers one, right? With the
Skill help, yes. Yeah, so we've just released what we've called the sort of priority helps and indicators, just a few sort of really important ones in our opinion, and a couple of sort of proof of concepts to make sure the tech's all working and get that stuff up and in game up front. The next batch, we're largely looking at focusing on more skilling, basically.
Is that going to be stuff, just to expand on it a little bit, is that going to be stuff like the Slayer helper, things like that?
I believe so, yeah.
I would get up the page, but I have to be disconnected from the office network to use this stream.
Sorry, I'm just talking to Mods for a moment here. My setup seems to be very lagged behind. I'm not sure if I'm coming across roboty. Apparently I'm coming across all fine. Okay, I'm just very confused by my slow-mo lip syncing that I'm seeing. But I'll work with it.
Yeah.
Don't rewatch yourself,
think
you'll
the
just
next...
confuse it.
Yeah, I think that the next batch of things is skill helpers and things like that. Zuko, have you got... I know you've been working a bit more closely on the content that would actually be going out.
Oh no, you put me on the spot here. So, let me think. So I have just been working on object overlays, but I think that's being moved to drop 4 actually. So what am I actually working on right now?
I can
oh my
let
God, I
you
was
all know if
actually
you want.
working on this a couple hours ago. Tide, what am I working on?
Right. Do you want me to tell you what's coming in drop 3?
Give us a
Yeah.
few highlights.
Give us your things, Sarvi. We got XP tracking.
That's what
That's
I'm working on.
We have a nice wood cutting helper with mining as well, with maybe some respawn timers in there as well.
Sounds very exciting.
Was that it? Okay, cool. We do know what we're working on, I promise.
It's just not directly in front of us right now. It's Justice asks, would it be feasible to add the exclamation mark command that Runelite has for checking boss KC, PBs, Slayer tasks, etc., and pets the C++ client eventually? It's a huge quality of life change that people love using to show off on their accounts.
Yeah.
What in the hell
Yeah, I'd like to
happened
see
there?
something like that.
LADAOTS. Sorry, I'm just fascinated by that. Go ahead.
That typo. Yeah. I wonder if maybe you'd want to do something more along the lines of quick chat that RuneScape has, which is something that you use to. If there's a little speech mark next to your name, so people know that you're not just like spouting crap. You do actually have like whatever kill count. Yeah, it's definitely something that we want to do.
Can we get the ability to never see them? Because I think that's like the worst thing I see about the chat box is just seeing everyone going exclamation mark level and exclamation mark task in the clan chat. And I'm just like, I don't want to see these.
Yeah, I think we'd have to be selective though. So, for example, if someone did exclamation mark layout, then you'll always see that really if they're in a raid.
Yeah, I think that makes sense for things like friends chats, etc. For me, it's just more of a case of like if you're trying to have like a discussion or topic, and then you're kind of like see 4 people decide to go exclamation mark pets and things like that to kind of show how many pets they've got, which is awesome. Like a lot of people have got pets. Didn't really ask at that point.
I got 15 Mods Roq.
I don't
Spoon.
have any.
You guys have pets? What?
It's alright.
I've got pet mice.
I've had 4 Rocky pets on the road to 99. I can share them out.
That's disgusting.
I know. We jump over to number 6. Is Linux and OSX support planned for the Steam client also?
Yes. Mac support is imminent. And we're built off all the same tech that RuneScape is, so we can support Linux as well. I'm sure we will do in the future. And Android and iOS. So yeah, it will be coming to every platform that RuneScape also supports.
Because I don't know if our Java client supports Linux properly at the moment, so I was quite curious as to whether.
Because it's in Java.
Maybe they're just old complaints that I'm remembering from long ago. Let's just jump to some other questions that we've had that necessarily aren't about the client. So into the other topics. Question 1. Osha Badu asks, can something be done about the awkward fishing in the Gauntlet? I don't quite know what they mean by awkward fishing, but...
I mean, yeah, I like to think that I'm very familiar with the Gauntlet, having made it and all, but I can't say it's something I've actually played often enough to know what the awkwardness about it is.
Okay. As a Gauntlet enthusiast, I will let you know right now that within the Gauntlet, it is a freaking nightmare where a lot of the time you will try to fish from the spot and your character will play the animation, however they will not actually be performing the actual fishing action, and thus you will never actually get a fish. And this is infuriating, and I blame you. Please fix this.
I mean, understandable. I would definitely blame me as well for anything in the Gauntlet being wrong. I have no idea why that would be off the top of my head. I'd need to go and do some digging into it. But I'd like to think that something could be done, yeah.
it sounds like it's a straight up bug, so that's another one perhaps for Modlite to put onto the list for us to discuss and investigate internally. For sure.
Might just be something as simple as an animation cancelling that we could do, just so that, you know, even if the character didn't quite perform the action, then at least you can actually see that happening, so you can just click it again.
Okay. Sack King RS asks, is there any chance we could get the official agility training world, which was used to be 346, back? It was a useful social hub for agility training, and it didn't really need to be taken off the themed worlds list. And I can tell you that one will come back next week. I will put the activity back on that world. It's a straightforward enough change. So yeah, you can go agility with all your friends, or laugh as people fall off the obstacles. It's always a fun pastime. Right, let's see what else we have. Princess JD asks, can we get an option to empty the fish barrel sack at the bank whilst it's equipped? It's a really long grind to get the sack, and it just makes barrel worse to use as you have to unequip it every time you bank.
So that was something that I implemented. Do you not have the ability to bank? So we've got that new-ish feature for accessing your worn inventory from within the bank interface. I was pretty sure that within that interface, you actually did have that option to empty and fill it from there. If that is the case, then that's how to do it. If not, that should be how to do it if our tech allows us to.
The only other way that I could think of would be perhaps tying it into the button that deposits the looting bag. I know we have that on some deposit boxes and stuff like that, to get that to perhaps look at various of the stashable inventories like the coal bag, the gem bag, the herb bag, etc. So perhaps look at whether it's just kind of like a deposit from bag button, given that it already does for the looting.
You just make every player an ultimate Iron Man.
We could do that, and we'd get more min. Okay, Wasting XP asks, make dark flippers longer when?
They want longer toes.
Yes.
What he's asking.
Your toes go all the way. Your toes don't go all the way to the end of the flippers. Yeah, we'll do it next week.
Don't say that.
We won't do it next week.
Modern has suddenly become an artist and is going to do the artwork for it.
All right.
Let's see if we can jump to one. Kasu Rasetsu, that's a mouthful, asks, do we have any sort of ETA on a second Twisted Tale? As a casual player, intermediate quests appeal to me a lot more than the long epic storylines and raids, which are cool too, of course, but they won't be relevant to me for years still. Also, looking forward to a sequel to Below Ice Mountain!
I know with the Twisted Tales that when Mod first pitched Getting Ahead?
Yeah, I think it was Getting Ahead.
Getting Ahead. He had a few others planned as well, that I'm sure he's still very keen on doing, and sort of after his big picture on how these tales might sort of fit into the world, a bunch of other people on the team came up with them as well. I think, Roq, you pitched one of them to us all.
I will not say the name of that quest because I don't think it's quite safe for streams.
Essentially not. But yeah, we've had a number of them pitched, and there's something that I've heard coming up again recently with people keen to look at getting some more out, sort of in the vague near future.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that small quests like the Twisted Tales are quite easy for people to kind of pick up and write a small short story for. So we'll always probably have a few of those in the backlog of things that we could pick up from time to time, or people will have a few of those suggestions just laying around in their head. I bet Ed has dozens. Right, on to the next one. Way of the Garo asks, can we have the ability to claim multiple pieces of achievement diary gear at once, similar to how you can claim multiple Gommel's hilts at once? Currently, you only get one piece per dialogue, while Gommel brings up a claim X.
Can't you go to Purdue and get more?
That's what Mod Arcane has said when he sees the response. So, if you want more, stump up the cash. Our Sensei JP asks, can you add white lily seeds to Hespori's collection log? White lily seeds are only obtained from Hespori, nowhere else.
I'd imagine if that's the case, then sure, it's a boss item.
We released White Lilies as part of that update to the Farming Guild, right?
Yes, when Hespori came through with it, I believe.
I would have thought that presumably that would mean that we'd hope to have other sources for White Lily seeds in the game. But if it's only ever going to be for the Hespori, then yes, for sure.
I know it's something that people ask about, perhaps being able to get them from like the very top tier of seed packs. But I think whenever we've discussed it in-house before, it's kind of like, should they really come from there? Because then that makes it, like you say, basically means you can get them without having to kill Hespori, which is maybe half of the point. Or do we care about them enough to say that they should only be from Hespori or from other places?
Gotcha.
For now, technically, it's the only place is Hespori, which technically means it probably should go on the collection log, by the collection log definitions.
It looks like you can get White Lilies from the Hallowed Sepulchre as well, so for any of you lore nuts, please feel free to go crazy and figure that one out.
Can you?
You can. You get Hallowed from the Hallowed Sepulchre. It's a lower tiered item that you can receive.
Oh, fair enough. Then, no, they're probably not for the collection log, really, based on that.
Oh, no,
I
sorry.
see chat
the
saying
lilies
it's the
themselves,
flowers, not the seeds.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Fair enough. Then back to yes. And also, if there's other things you think you should be on the collection log, I know when it was being developed, me and Lenny had hours of fun trying to find really obscure things to put on there. And how many people rolled their eyes when I said, let's do the evil chicken outfit too. It's like one of the rarest things to get.
Can't remember. A cabbage is in the collection log for clues.
No.
No. They're just
Maybe,
what you get when you don't roll an item correctly on beginners. Because I don't think we put the potions in. Yes, it is.
Still waiting on that one. I'm really good at the quiz now.
Big same.
Right. Questcape asks, thoughts on adding special contracts to Mahogany Homes after contract streaks? These will require you to repair large buildings, such as like mansions, pubs, etc., and require in the region of somewhere around 100 planks to complete. E.g., you receive a special contract from Amy for your 100th contract, asking you to repair the mansion in Nada.
For as much Mahogany Homes as I've done, I would love this. I don't think it really adds too much value to the content, and probably wouldn't want to buff the XP rates any more than they already are. Mahogany Homes is pretty good, but the variety would be nice.
The one thing I'd
Maybe,
add to it.
Go on.
The
Go on, Mod Lenny,
one
you
thing
go.
I'd One thing I'd add to it is that there'd probably be some issues to work out with all of the sort of mansions and pubs, and just generally larger buildings tend to have other purposes as well, unlike the little houses that current contracts have been sort of assigned to. And if we think about the mansion in Nada, I'm sure that's used in some quest or other. And what are you going to do when you show up mid-quest and you've got a contract there and half the furniture's missing? Like,
I like the idea
I've been robbed.
of like there's a couple of people sitting at the board game table in like the Blue Moon Inn, and you just run up and you just smack it with a hammer in front of them while they're playing Runelite or something.
You'll ruin someone's
I
game
like
of
it.
checkers with a giant hammer.
I think instead of giving them extra XP or points for that, what we could do is offer like a chance at a house item override. So, for instance, like we added the gnome child override for some of the items in the house. Kind of like how you can get the gnome scarf for doing certain gnome cooking jobs.
Yeah, it's just one of those things like with Slayer points when you get to like your 100th task, 10th task, 50th task, like you get a little extra bonus, which is nice. It would be fun to have that in Mahogany Homes, but
For your 1000th task, you can rebuild all the furniture in the castle in Ardoyne.
I can't remember how many tasks I've done now. I have the whole outfit, and I've got 2 plank sacks because I lost one of them in the Warriors Guild.
Oof. Big oof. Deidros Gaming asks, how does the team feel about where skilling is in the main game right now? Seems mostly superfluous most of the time. We need just levels to pass checks. Only thing that feels great to have at a high level while PVMing is agility. The ability to skip past an area to get to the boss faster feels great.
Yeah, it's, to me at least, it's kind of just what the game is. I think if you're particularly looking for sort of that gratification from having high levels, then perhaps you should make an Iron Man. That tends to be one of the biggest things that makes people feel good about, their individual skilling grinds, to be honest with you. But when you're a main, you just jump on the Grand Exchange. I run a main account, and yeah, I mean, why bother with cooking when I just get like all those manta rays from either for CAF or just from the Grand Exchange. Iron Men actually do cooking every now and then.
That's the difference between like skills and combat stats, right? Is that the more like as you're training combat, you are getting rewards from it, whereas as you're training like herb lore, you're like getting something out of it, but you're spending a lot of money to get it. So maybe that's why it like feels a bit different. I think skilling is kind of fine as it is. Yeah, definitely get an Iron Man ultimate, maybe even. Because yeah, it makes the like smaller goals or like all the steps towards reaching those like level checks like so satisfying.
Or go for the ultimate goal of 200 million XP and chase the high scores, perhaps. Right, I've just been notified that through all the excitement that's been going on, I've made the stream a lot longer than it should have been. So apologies to Moldsphere for that. So we're going to call it a day there and wrap it up. As always, you can check some of the latest announcement in the chat by using !game update to find out about the latest game update, !Summer Summit to gain more information about the recent Summer Summit we did at the weekend, and !merch to see some of the newest merch that's coming out, such as the pins from Angelscapes. So from myself, Mods Roq, and the rest of the mods in the stream today, we'd like to thank everyone for joining. And as always, we'll see you next week.